Hi, guys. Hey. So, 2 weeks left, right? Not counting today, 2 weeks. Am I correct? Hello. Yes. Okay. You should be pretty close to being done. If you need something to spur you on, you can turn in your final, which we'll go over again today, on the last day of class and be done with this class and not have to worry about anything for it while you're doing the rest of your finals. I highly suggest that you consider that, because then you don't have to be stressed about this one. You can get it taken care of.
So when you say final, you mean like final draft?
What you're going to do, yeah, okay, so I guess I will go into what it is. So if you'll remember, there's basically 3 parts to your final, correct? Right? There is your self-evaluation sheet. This is a physical sheet, the one I handed you, or if you lost it, one that you have been writing the whole time and totally not making up. You got to be honest on this thing. You're at the Lord's University. Don't make it up. Give me your self-evaluation sheet, all right? This is how often you turn things in on time and how often you read everyone's submissions. Number 2, you can then email me. You don't have to print it off. You can print it off if you feel like it, but you can email me 2,000 words, which is about a double submission, of polished prose, which I am going to give you a final review on, meaning I'll write out a few paragraphs. This will let you show me something that's really polished, so that then, a lot of times when we're in the writing groups, we are giving you some of the same comments. It's like, oh, you overwrite this. Oh, your dialogue is a little clunky. And you're thinking, yeah, but I'm writing this so fast. Of course it is. It's your chance to do something that you think is pristine and then get an evaluation from me on it, okay? This is probably the reason why you're taking the class, all right? Is to get that. So you turn that in. I will grade this qualitatively. Everything else is quantitative. Did you do it or not? But your grade is mostly based on this. And on this one, you will then attach as a document in an email to me 30,000 words, which I am just going to look at and say, yep, that adds up to 30,000. And it doesn't look like they repeated the word the for 17 pages. So they did it, okay?
Can the 2,000 words be in addition to the 30,000 words, or do they have to be part of the 30,000?
I would prefer they're part of, but if there's something else you really want my critique on, go ahead and submit that. That's fine. My preference is, honestly, that you're giving me the first 2,000 words, the opening, or at least the opening of a character sequence, because the idea is that I want to read this like an editor or a new reader, that you're trying to sell this to, so that I can give you the honest evaluation. Like if you give me the big climactic scene at the end, my advice to you is going to be much worse than if you give me the beginning, because the beginning I can read like an editor and say, this is how likely I am to put this down. Here's what you're doing really well and what's grabbing my attention, that sort of stuff. Here's what's boring me. That's the most important stuff for you to have. So try and give me what you would want a new reader to be reading.
With that in mind, do editors generally start at chapter 1, or do they start at a prologue if there is one?
They will start with whatever begins it. Okay. So if the prologue is weaker than chapter 1, maybe you don't want to have a prologue for your story. And you can submit me chapter 1 and say, I'm cutting the prologue. But, it doesn't have to be the chapter 1 of what you wrote. It's the first chapter of revised, where you're going to be. Does that make sense?
And it's at least 30,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you just attach the thing and send it to me. And basically, I'm going to say how many words, and you just go ahead and, write in your email, if you would, how many you got. So I don't have to add it, please. So let's go ahead and put this in here. So I forgot to do this one year, and then I had to open everyone's file. And I would just rather have this, and then I can check. So tell me how much you got. I believe today we have one last day of doing business type stuff, and the last 2 weeks we will probably do as Q&As. You bring something craft-wise that you are interested in having me talk to you about, maybe something you're having trouble with your writing in a general term that you think would help others, and we'll talk about it, okay? So those are the next 2 weeks. I will have stuff prepared to blab about if you don't bring questions, but I want those to be focused mostly Q&A if possible. All right? Let's run down the list of stuff left over from last week. One of them was movie deals, right? All right, what else was I going to talk about? Someone made a list for me. Taxes, yes. Queries. Oh.
Platforms.
Yeah, platforms. Okay. That was the whole list? I got it all? All right. So, very kind of nuts and bolts sort of stuff this week. But this sort of thing is somewhat important. It's very important. It's just good for you to know about. No one else is going to tell it to you. Let's start with platforms. What I mean by a platform is this is basically the self-marketing lesson. Did you guys need chairs? There's a seat right here. So, self-marketing. From the beginning of time, basically every author has been forced to self-market. It's become a bigger and bigger deal in recent years. The main reason for that is the online ability. In the 90s, early 90s, if you wanted to connect with readers, you basically had to travel to them. Now you don't have to anymore, but that offers you opportunities, but it also allows the publisher to shift more of the burden to you. There are two basic ways to approach this. The first way is to say, I am going to do as little marketing as possible, and I'm going to write as many stories as possible. You take the opinion of a month spent doing online marketing or any other type of marketing is a month that I'm not writing, and I might as well have more things out there, either being purchased if you're self-publishing or with the potential of being bought by a publisher. So this is kind of just to take it. I don't like to self-market. This is very rare, but it is possible. Some people have the theory that this is just the way you should do it. Other people go the other way and say, what good does it do me if I write 3 books a year if no one reads any of them? I'd rather write 1 book a year and spend that other time really pushing that book to start making a name for myself and to drive people to pay attention to me. You'll kind of have to decide where you want to be on this scale because you can do anything in between. There's a lot of different things you can do for self-marketing. They are all of varying levels of value depending on how good you are at it. One of the main ones is blogging. Blogging. There are a number of authors out there that what they do is they have a very, very good blog that is widely read and becomes a marketing tool for their books. Some authors that do this so that you can kind of watch and see. Scalzi is very good at this. So is Joe Conrath. I think, what is that? Is that a C? Sorry, Joe, if I spelled your name wrong. Cory Doctorow is quite good at this. You'll find that there are a number of authors that do this. The trick with this is the idea of the platform. People don't want to come to your blog to read about your books if they've never read your books. Okay? Now, blogging can be split into, I generally blog for my readers. That's what my blog is for. My blog is come and find out what's going on in Brandon's life. I'm popular enough that's a good marketing tool for me. It allows me to connect with my readers. It is not selling a lot of books. It's getting added value to the readers I already have, who then hopefully continue to read my books and are interested in things like this. You can probably see how that's different, for instance, from Cory Doctorow. Cory Doctorow is one of the prime bloggers at Boing Boing, one of the biggest blogs on the internet. He blogs about things such as freedom of information. He does technology. He talks about cutting edge sort of pop culture things, and he writes very engagingly and interestingly about them, sometimes very controversially about them. His blog, then because the blogging is fascinating or controversial, or whatever you want to call it, draws millions of readers. Then those blog people recognize his name, and he has a link to download his books as part of his blog. A person who did this that you might find interesting is Larry Correia. Larry Correia is a local author who self-published in the days before e-publishing came around. And Larry is a mega gun nut, okay? This guy, he is really into his guns. He loves them. And he started writing books for gun nuts, right? He writes a series. His first series is called Monster Hunter International. It's basically, imagine if you took Men in Black and combined it with gun fanatics. So they don't just kill monsters, they kill them with cool guns and talk about how cool their guns are, right? So Larry became an expert in the platform of sort of gun rights and types of guns, and he tapped into this. He started being very vocal on various blogs and forums where gun nuts hang out and talk about their guns. He gained a good reputation among them. That's important, the platform, good reputation, and good content. The idea is that you are shilling your book to them as an afterthought to the good reputation and good content. This is where a lot of online marketing new writers go wrong. They pop into a forum that they've never been on before, and then they say, hey, everybody, go read my book. Or they do a blog post about how awesome their book is. Nobody wants to read that. But if you do a blog post on how the new Glock is like totally inferior to the old Glock and it should change back, all the gun nuts are like, yeah, or no, you're wrong. But you do know your stuff. And by the way, you write these books, I'll probably like them because I like the sort of stuff you're talking about. Larry made a platform for that. He took off really big. He eventually published with Bain, which is the perfect publisher for him, gives him a lot of control, but also kind of has that same audience. He eventually got made into, because his day job was an accountant, he got made into, I'm so envious, G.I. Joe's accountant. He appeared in a G.I. Joe comic book as Spreadsheet, the official G.I. Joe accountant. He is a G.I. Joe character because the G.I. Joe writers, as you can imagine, are gun nuts. And so they like his books, they like him, and he's like a big guy that would fit in G.I. Joe. And so Larry is now Spreadsheet, the G.I. Joe accountant.
What a call name.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that perfect? It's like awesome. But this is what Larry did. You can talk to Larry about doing this. He did it perfectly for the platform sort of way that you're doing it. Good reputation, good content, and books that then tie into that content. And you can see how making a platform that way could be very effective. The problem is it takes a lot of time to do this. All right? It takes a lot of time. Joe Conrath does this kind of as a self-publishing guru. John Scalzi does this as a controversial blogger who writes interesting things about a lot of stuff. He was AOL's blogger back in the day, like their official blogger. That was his job before he became a writer. He started his own blog, wrote all sorts of cool things, blogged his novel as he was writing it, and an editor from Tor read the novel being blogged and contacted him and said, I want to buy this. But, you know, Scalzi had hundreds of thousands of readers at that point because he was such a good writer blog-wise. This takes a lot of time. If you're naturally good at this, or if you naturally have a platform that's interesting to you that you want to write about that does tie to your books, then this is a method you can use. You don't have to do this. If you do it right, it can be a wonderful way to get attention, but a lot of people break into this and think, I have to be doing this. It is not the only way to go about doing it. If you've got good books, you will find ways to make people read them or coerce them to read them. You don't need to do this, okay? Questions about any of this?
Is this kind of the same thing that with the YA world, that like John Green and those other people who are writing books like have video blogs?
Yeah. I'm not as in touch with the YA world on this as I am with the adult world, just because these are the circles I move in. But from what I understand, like for instance in children's YA, book trailers are a bigger deal. In adult, no one watches them, and kids, lots of teens watch them. The video blogs and things like that, things for kids to come do online at your website is usually a good idea. But that's not necessarily the platform. You're talking more about, we'll transition to that. They're doing, probably a lot of them are doing more like this. This is the get to know the author. This is the, if you go look at a blog post that I do, it'll be like, this is when I was breaking in, here was a fun story about me, or I've read this book and here's me talking about it. You would have very little interest in that if it wasn't me writing it. And that's the sort of thing they're doing with the video blogs, is making themselves more out there. Now, this is probably, the next level down from doing this is doing this. You put extra content about your books. You have a FAQ where you answer questions. You have a blog where, here's a reader mail submission. It's about you and your books. No one's going to want to read this except people who've already read your books. And it can be effective, time-wise, in that this is for people, once your books are out, to help you kind of generate some momentum. If you don't have time for this or this sort of thing, you can move to this. This is kind of like the do one blog post a week and make it like, an interesting question that a fan asked you that you didn't answer, or something like that. This, basically, they're blogging more than once a week. If they are blogging only once a week, they are writing a really in-depth, interesting blog post that would be of interest to people who had never heard of them before.
So it sounds like most of these authors you're mentioning, they blog about things that are not directly related to their books.
Yes.
Is it possible to even do like more than one blog on different topics?
Yes, but boy, that's kind of shredding yourself thin. And do remember, they do, like, for instance, Larry Correia is writing books about gun nuts shooting monsters, and he's gun nuts. Cory Doctorow is writing books about people fighting against the government establishment. His big series is Little Brother and the new one that just came out. Both are New York Times bestsellers. They're YA books. He's got one about gold farmers in China on MMOs staging a revolution and stuff like that. It's very similar to what he's blogging about, but it's not the same. Scalzi, I don't know what the heck Scalzi's doing, but that's Scalzi. He does blog on science fiction and fantasy writing topics and things like that, but more he's just interesting, so people read his stuff.
So how did your site get started? What were the steps you took to get that?
I did this after I was published. I didn't worry about a website before. Once I got published, I'm like, all right, let's put up some information. And that's, if you go to their websites, I need a new one. We're working on it, but mine can be a few years old. It doesn't really matter. If people are visiting, it's because they already know who I am and they want to read my blog. If you go to, Boing Boing, you're wanting it to be, if it looks outdated, that's a bad thing because it's a tech blog and a pop culture blog. You know what I mean? There's a difference there. So this is the next level. The next level down, there's actually one down here. This is the minimum effort online marketing thing. Minimum. Have a static web page about your book where it can be bought, a little biography of you, and things like that. So that when people say, who is this person, they go, they find some information. If you are not going to update regularly, do not indicate that you're going to, okay? This is a big mistake. Don't put, under construction or more content coming. If someone comes to your website and your latest blog post is 2 years old, that looks really bad. If they come to the website and it's a static page that says, here is me and my books, that is eternal, right? Doesn't matter. So if you're not going to do this, don't promise that you're going to. It's going to hurt you. All right, makes sense? So, breaking over in the other direction, there are all these social media things. Social media, kind of the buzzwords of today's culture, right? These can be very helpful, can be very useful. It's kind of like this stuff. Usually, if you're going to be doing this, you will have a Twitter feed, you'll have a Facebook page. What are the new kids doing? Is it still Facebook and Twitter?
Facebook and Twitter. Oh, Tumblr as well.
Tumblr. They're going to have a Tumblr. That's what the new. That's like. I bet there's a new one that the new kids are discovering. But Tumblr is what the next generation. Yeah, you're going to have some of those things, and you're going to pick them. Don't use probably LiveJournal, though I like LiveJournal. It's kind of like 7 generations before. But LiveJournal's fun. But yeah, social media, you'll want to be doing some social media stuff. George R. R. Martin still uses his LiveJournal. And so it's just fine. But, you know, be on some of those things. And if there's any special sort of information you can add, you can post them there. But again, it takes time. Is this the sort of thing you want to put time into? Most of the time, something like Twitter, for instance, people are only going to follow you for 2 reasons. Either you are writing interesting stuff about a topic they're interested in, or you are a raw author they like to read, and so they want to see what you write, what you tweet about your books and things like that, and decide what your Twitter feed is going to be if you're going to put one up. I mirror my Facebook and my Twitter with, you know, Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus all get the same posts. That's of ease for me. Some of the authors who are a little bit more extreme are doing new information for each social media section, you know, based on what they think that social media is good at doing. Okay? This is not, now, if this is your goal, you should start this right now. If this is your goal, maybe get the static page up, but don't worry about anything else. Or if you're going to do a hybrid, if this is your goal, ignore it until you have something for people to buy. Okay? But this, I would say, would be the minimum. All right? You can put tons of effort into this. There are lots of other things you can do for self-promotion. One of the things that people like to do these days, I don't know how effective these are. This started after I broke in, are blog tours. Rather than going on a tour which is really expensive, you will contact other bloggers and you will write an interesting piece, and you will say, hey, here's some examples of interesting pieces that I write that I posted on my blog. Do you mind if I do a guest blog? I'll give you a guest blog on this topic which your readers might find interesting. You go contact some blogs with a decent readership that you think you can approach doing on, and you write guest pieces for them and do a blog tour. I don't know how effective this is, but a lot of people seem to do it. It's something to consider, particularly if you can write interesting blog posts about a variety of topics. Another thing that you can do, people used to do mailings. You can't really do mailings anymore. You can do them to independent booksellers. You can't do them to Barnes & Noble, really. But you can go visit your local Barnes & Noble, or any Barnes & Noble you pass, or any independent bookseller you pass, just while you're on vacation or whatever. You can drop off a copy of your book and give it to the manager or to the person in charge of that department. I always gave it, I said, is there a sci-fi reader on your staff? If there is, I gave them a copy of my book. I pitched it to them and said, if I give you this, will you promise to read it? And that worked fairly well. Now, my book was in the bookstores for sale, so they could hand sell the copies they had on the shelves. If your book is self-published, that's not going to work so well for you, unless you're trying to convince the manager to stock your book. Okay? That's one thing you can consider. You'll probably want to have some sort of little giveaway for your signings. You really don't need to, but people expect it, like a bookmark or something. I don't know how effective these are. Everybody always has bookmarks. I don't know. You guys go to signings, you get all the bookmarks. What do you do with them? Does anyone use them?
If I don't lose them, yes.
Yeah. So some of you use them. They might be useful, but you know, it's expected that you probably have one of these. They're fairly cheap, so you just give them out. You know, at your book signings. Signings. So if you're self-published, getting into the bookstores is difficult. You might be able to convince a local bookstore to carry a few of your books. You're more likely to get them to have a signing for you where they'll sell the books on consignment, which means you bring them in, you sell them, they take a cut, and then pay you, you know, what's left over. And if it sells well and does well, then maybe they'll carry a copy and put it on the shelves. If you are self-published, though, your best bet is to do online marketing and not to worry about the print editions too much. Selling 15 extra copies through hours and hours of effort to get them into bookstores is probably not going to be worth your effort nearly as much as writing one cool blog post that gets reblogged and tweeted around that points out to your website, which has links to your ebooks. That's going to be my guess. Okay? Yes?
Is it like in blogging, is it looked down on if you have like a blogspot blog, or like do you need to purchase a domain name?
Once you get popular, yes, you should probably. But like I said, George R. R. Martin, the biggest writer in fantasy today uses LiveJournal. Okay? So,
Well, he's also a little older, so he can
Yeah.
get away with that.
so, and I'm sure there are others. Yeah. A web domain is $8. I mean, it's not like, you should probably go buy your name if that's what you're planning to do, and just have your name and put something up on it. You should probably at least consider that. Yeah.
What about using Kickstarter to help?
Do not use Kickstarter to help. All right, here's the problem. All right, if you've got a cool thing that you want to build for people, Kickstarter it, fine. I am very against authors using Kickstarter that do not already have an established reputation, because they don't know the quality of what you're creating. And that falls kind of under the Kickstarter says, don't use Kickstarter to fund your life, okay? In other words, you're not supposed to use Kickstarter to get tuition. You're not supposed to use Kickstarter for all these kinds of things. Now, technically, writing a book is probably okay to Kickstarter, but if you've got a finished product that's an ebook that they can read and you're going to do a Kickstarter for a hard copy, that's okay. Do not have them Kickstarter you to pay you before you write your book. I think that is abusing Kickstarter. Number one, you're probably going to fail. Number two, it's kind of abusing Kickstarter. Write a good book. Get it out there. If it starts to take off, then say, let's do a Kickstarter for a hard copy, hardcover. That can be awesome. Does that make sense? You see the difference between those two things? I want you to prove to the readers that you're worth being Kickstarted before you do it. All right? That's a personal opinion. You could disagree with me on that one. Yeah. Let's talk about, okay, we already talked about the conventions as publicity. Let's just go ahead and move on to the next topic. Anything else on self-promotion? It's not something you need to think about a lot, but I feel like you should have something in your notes about this for when you do publish what you're going to do with it.
How do you approach a bookstore or an organization about doing a signing?
If you are published through a mainstream publisher, you can ask your publicist to get a signing for you. It has varying results, but usually you'll end up getting one locally. I, in the past, for all my local stores, have gone in, asked to meet the community relations manager. That's the BNN term, or whoever's in charge of events. Prove to them that you have a book that they would be interested in selling.
Here's my driver's license.
No, it's more like, yeah, this book is on your shelves. I'm a local author. Can we do a signing? If you're in children's, King's English does a lot of those in Salt Lake. If you're an adult, then Sam Weller does a lot of those. BYU Bookstore is another great place to have events. All the bookstores around here are pretty awesome. They're very skeptical of self-published books because a lot of people do that. If you are self-published, you might ask locally to the Barnes & Noble like in Orem, hey, can I be part of your next author palooza? That's when they get like 20 authors together. And they'll probably say yes to you on that, because even if you only bring 2 people in, they don't have to do like a lot just for you because they're already doing this big thing. And if they have 30 authors and some of them only bring 2 people in, well, it's still creating this big event. Does that make sense? If you're actually, you've been published and they're carrying your book already, it's much easier to get a book signing. And I just walk in and ask them, community relations manager, locally. You're not supposed to, but I do. Okay? All right, so taxes. Taxes. Oh boy, we'll talk about the boring one, then we'll go to queries. Everyone's always interested in that, and movie deals. Taxes. Okay. So, as a writer, you are self-employed. All right? This comes as a surprise to a lot of writers. It came as a surprise to me. You are a small business owner. Okay? When you write a book, when you sell a book, you don't actually sell a book. What you do when you sell a book to a publisher is you are licensing to them the right to publish that book for a set amount of time, depending on sales and things like that. You retain the copyright, and you are then a corporation who is licensing something to another corporation to sell. Just as if you had the designs for a new type of bathroom licensing thingy, I don't know, a widget, and you went to, somebody and said, do you want to license this to sell my widgets? It's actually, as far as the government's concerned, basically the same thing, okay? That's what you're doing. That means you will be getting a 1099. 1099, not a W-2. Nope, you don't get those anymore. So this is all like fascinating tax stuff, I'm sure. Are there any accountants in here? Yay, oh, that's right. Hey, this is fascinating to you.
Resident accountant.
Yes, resident accountant. If you write really well, maybe you'll end up in G.I. Joe. Yeah. Yeah. You can go meet Larry Correa. Have you ever met him at some con somewhere? And you can commiserate about accountants who write sci-fi fantasy. So you don't get a W-2. What this means is basically, and you can correct me if I get anything wrong here, the 1099 is basically kind of what you get if you're an independent contractor. And this means a couple of things. Number one, when you start making over, ask your tax professional about this. I am not a tax professional. This, don't construe this the wrong way. But once you make over, I think it's like $500. Under $500 is like a hobbyist income, and it changes. But it's about that. Ask your accountant what it is. As long as you're under $500, nobody cares. Okay? Nobody cares if it's under $500, and you're okay. Once you start getting over that, then it's no longer hobbyist income, and you start having to deal with things like self-employment tax. What's self-employment tax? Anyone know? Other than you? Yeah.
Basically taxes that you have to give to the government, because normally it's if you work for a company or something like that, your company, based upon what you put on your W-4s, basically gives a certain amount to the government as taxes.
Right. It's mostly actually Social Security, isn't it? Yeah. Mostly it's your Social Security. So your employer, Social Security is 15% of your income, and your employer pays 7.5%, and you pay 7.5%, or something like that. It's like 7.2, so it's like 14.5% or something.
Basically, based on those allowances, then you take a certain amount to pay for taxes to help basically ensure that at the end of the year, when you do.
No, that's withholding. That's not the self-employment tax. Okay.
What I'm saying is, at the end of the year, that you don't end up having to pay that all at once.
No. It's paid by your employer. It's not taken out of your money.
Wait, your taxes are paid by your employer?
The self-employment tax, your employer pays half of your Social Security.
Well, I'm not talking about Social Security.
That's what self-employment tax is. You're wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry. Am I right? Yes, you're wrong. You're wrong. Let me explain this. Self-employment tax is 15%-ish that your employer pays half of. It doesn't get taken out of your wages. Your employer pays this. Every one of you have a job. Your employer is paying an extra 7.5% to the government to be put into your Social Security fund. And you are paying half of that in your yearly taxes. When you do your taxes, there's a thing on there that you pay. Am I right? Yes. So that is, once you get over $500, you have to pay an extra 7.2%. Between $500, I'm not sure on this number, again, check, up to about $100K. And after that, you don't have to pay it. Okay? Yes.
What happens if you're a writer, but you have a day job?
This is counted as self-employed income.
Okay, so do you have two tax forms then?
Yes. Yep. You now have a new tax form. And once you make over that, you have a new tax form. You're going to be doing all this. Am I right? Get me if I'm wrong on any of this. But you're going to have a new tax form, okay? In which you're going to pay this right here, okay? And this is one of the big ones that's uncounted, that people don't expect, that you're going to have an extra 7.2%, 2% to 5%. That's right now being paid by your employer. So if you make from your employer, you're making 40K, there's actually a 7.2% on addition to that they're paying that's not counted on your income. Keep that in mind. All right, self-employment tax. Estimates. Normally, your employer, this is what you were talking about, your employer is taking out withholdings from you that they are giving to the government to make sure at the end of the year you don't end up owing the government money. All right? Even if, if you are making money, that you are not doing that on, you actually have to pay taxes quarterly, not yearly. If your employer is not withholding money for you and paying your taxes, you are required to pay every quarter. Now, if you're getting money back every year because you're a poor student and you're underneath a certain threshold, so you're not paying any taxes, this one's not a big deal, okay? Once you start making a real income at this, I would say this one probably kicks in. I don't know what the real income is, but basically if you're making under 20 grand, you're probably getting it all back anyway. They're not going to care if you pay estimates. If your estimates are, here, I give you $100, but you're going to give it back to me in April, you're probably going to be okay. Again, I'm not a tax professional. If you get in trouble, this is not my fault. But you will have to be paying estimates, and usually the estimates, you're okay as long as you pay whatever you had to pay the previous year. All right, I'm sorry this is all so boring, but you probably ought to know this. So, this is all it took me by surprise. So, for instance, if last year you ended up paying $3,000 in taxes, you lucky dog. That means you're actually making money at this, but you're not having to pay very much. You have to pay then, the next year, you would want to pay 1/4 of that every quarter as an estimate to the government. If you do that, you'll be safe. Even if you end up earning more than that and end up owing $6,000, if you've paid estimates based on the last year, you're going to be okay. You'll have to pay $3,000 at the end during tax period, and then the next year you'll have to pay on $6,000. Okay? Does that make sense to people? Do these two things make sense? These are things that they don't tell you about. You didn't have a question? Okay. Okay. So, self-employment tax estimates. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You were thinking about these, weren't you?
I'm thinking about 1099 because I've done work as a private contractor.
Yes.
Doing sales and stuff. And so I got a 1099, but basically what it was showing is that they didn't pay any of that estimate at all.
Nope, they didn't.
I had to pay that all myself.
Yep. You're thinking about this one. And then they probably hit you with this too, but it's kind of muddled in there somewhere.
And I didn't notice.
Yeah. So these two things. Now there's also the one that you expect, which is insurance. Insurance. Insurance is the big scary thing. It's not as bad as it sounds unless you happen to be sick. Then it's awful. If you happen to be healthy, then insurance is not a headache at all. Isn't that ironic? Yeah. But I guess that's not irony. Yeah, it might actually be irony.
It's supposed to be so you don't have to worry as much.
Yeah. But anyway, so it's not as hard, it's not as bad as you think. If you are really worried about insurance, there are self-employed professional organizations, like the National Organization of Self-Employed People. Howard belongs to it. You can talk to him. If you join those, you can get insurance and they're required to take you. It's just really expensive. Or you can just get a private plan, which is what we have, because we are lucky and our whole family has nothing that keeps us from being insured. And so now that we're on a self-employed thing, they can't just drop us. Once you get in, you're good. They can raise our cost, and it is expensive. But yeah, so.
Well, that's because you don't have an employer paying half of it. I mean.
No, it's because a large group, they're able to mitigate the risks by having people that are not going to be risky, and one person they consider a very big risk, and so the premiums are higher, even if even if you discount what the employer is doing. But we've got insurance. I think ours is $1,000 a month. Yes, for our family. But you could ask my wife. It might be a little less than that. But that's what it costs. And these are unnoticed costs. So this is the things that kill the self-employed people that you have to be aware of. You're going to have to pay this. You're going to have to pay this. You're going to have to pay this. You're going to need to earn more than you think you need to earn. A lot of people say you need to earn about 30% more than you're making from your day job in order to quit your day job and have the same standard of living. Okay? I don't know if it's quite that high, but that's a rule of thumb people have given. So be aware of this, the $500 thing. Now, some of the good news. Okay? You can take deductions. All right? As long as they're legitimate business expenses. The big one I suggest you avoid is a home office, unless you're a tax professional and you know exactly how to do it. Home offices are a red flag for the IRS, all right? Be very careful. And the other big problem with having a home office is if you claim a home office, it becomes then commercial space. When you sell your house, you get hit with tax penalties you're not hit with. So it's really not a good idea to try taking a home office if you're ever planning to sell your house. Or, does that make sense? Because the benefits for it being residential are pretty cool.
So basically, are you saying then that if you want to do an office, it's better to rent a commercial?
No, it's better to work from your house and just not claim it. That's probably the best thing to do. We claim ours, but we did it under the advice of a tax professional where we actually bought a house where we made the basement office space. And the basement has offices, and the basement is used for office work. And the family doesn't live down there. We have an office in our basement. It is considered commercial space, so if we were to sell the house, we would not get, when you sell your house, you get like you can just waive off the profit that you make on it and things like that. You can't do that if it's commercial. So we did it under very strict advice, and it's worked very well for us. But be really careful about home offices. You really probably don't want to consider that one until you're making enough money that it's your full-time thing, and then go talk to a tax professional. Don't talk to me, okay? Yes?
All that being said, what's the advantage to having a home office?
You deduct part of your living expenses, all of your utilities and all those things are part of the necessary requirements to do your business. And so you get some cool deductions. They can be pretty substantial deductions. But because they can be pretty substantial deductions and because it's so easy to say, yeah, this room is my office, the IRS red flags those very quickly. So you have to have good records if you want to do that. The things that you can do that are very easy, that are completely legit, are things such as your computer. Warning, you need to depreciate it. You think I was going to forget that? I tried to do all this stuff on my own for a few years, and then I just broke down and got an accountant. If you need an accountant who knows writer sort of stuff, come to me. I've got an accountant, Eric Gurr, who kind of specializes in it. It has me and James Dashner and a bunch of the authors in the area because he now has done all this research on this stuff. But computers have to be depreciated. This means you can't take them as a deduction on the first year, except in special cases. Like last year, I think you could buy any amount of new equipment and deduct it immediately. There's weird rules on things like this. But usually you have to depreciate, which means that you take 1/5 of it one year, 1/5 the next year, 1/5 the next year, or something like that. Talk to your tax professional. But your computer, buying a new computer can be a pretty substantial deduction. Even if it's, even if you're making, let's say you're making $1,000 a year, you're probably going to be able to deduct all this money and not have to worry about any of this. For instance, if your computer costs you $2,000, you bought a nice laptop and you're depreciating that over 4 years, that's half of your money that you're already deducting, right? Any of your flights and hotels when you go to a convention.
If they're used primarily
Yes.
for this sort of thing.
For this, yeah, if you're going to a convention.
It's 2 days for the convention and 7 days at this event.
Yeah. But you can deduct the 2 days of the convention, correct?
Yes.
You just can't deduct the rest.
Yeah.
Your food, you can deduct half. Am I right on that?
Yes.
1/2 of your food, okay? When you're at a convention or something like that. When you're away from home, you can take half the food. There is also a standard deduction for a day out. I'm not sure how that one works.
Yeah.
Talk to your tax professional.
That one depends.
Yeah. But there is some sort of thing where you don't have to keep the receipts. They just say, a day of a person at a convention is this much in deduction from food. Just take that. Okay? So with these things, you can also deduct your ticket to the convention. Worldcon's like $200, okay? Your hotel is going to be you're hopefully sharing with other people because you're new writers, but you're probably going to be paying like $50 a night. You're there for 3 nights. Your flight, you've already deducted this entire $1,000, okay? So this can be very useful for you to actually save you tax headaches and also save you tax burden.
But that's when you're actually making a good living.
No, this is if you're only making $1,000. That's a year. Now, big warning, you can take a loss. It's a big red flag. but that means you can take and write off all these things if you have another income that you can use as, these are actually exemptions. These are not deductions, right? Yeah. Exemptions are different from deductions, but let's not go there. You can take all of this stuff as an exemption, but if you take a loss multiple years in a row, it's a big red flag, and talk to your tax professional before you do it. You see how I'm saying that a lot? I just don't want you guys to sue me. I'm also being recorded, so I want to be careful on this. But you can take a loss. Some authors I know strongly recommend taking the loss. But yeah. Okay? Question?
What does taking a loss mean?
That means that you spent $2,000 and you made $100. So you're going to take $1,900 of exemptions from your other income that you don't end up having to pay taxes on. Okay?
I can see why that would be a red flag.
Yes, it is a red flag. Yep, it's a big one. But if you're the type that keeps good records, you know, you can do this, and you might get audited. You will probably get audited if you do it a lot. But if you have good records, it can actually, you know, and you can prove, hey, I'm a writer. I'm not making a living at it. There's nothing wrong with not making a living at writing yet. Most businesses take a loss early in their business. You just have to, it means you have to be making good records. Now, I should probably explain the difference between exemptions and deductions. I'm going to get this one a little wrong, so tell me. But you can do all of this and then take the standard deduction that you normally take right now, that a lot of you probably do. Because these are from your business. They are something different. These are what you're doing to make money. Deductions are things where the government's like, we're going to be lenient on you because of your taxes for this and this and this, so we'll let you deduct this. You have a kid. We understand how hard it is that you have to pay for this kid. That's for the good of society. We give you a deduction because you have this kid, because we want to encourage you to help benefit society. These, as exemptions, are things that you're doing that you are actively trying to make money at, and you need to be able to do this stuff to make money. The argument for this, if you just think about it this way, let's say you spent $500,000 to make $550,000. That's a 10% earnings. That's actually, in the business world, okay. It's not fantastic. A lot of businesses are looking for much more than that, but that's okay. If you were charged your taxes even with deductions on the $550,000, you would end up owing like $70,000 maybe, just off the ballpark, and you only made $50,000. Do you see what I'm saying there? This is why you also, this is something we can say at BYU, I actually do not pay tithing on any of this. My bishop called me in when I first did this, and I was going to try doing. He said, if you spent $500,000 and made $550,000 and owed $50,000 in tithing, what are you going to do? So that's why it's important to keep in your head what the difference between exemptions and deductions are. Sorry, this is boring, guys, but no one else is going to warn you of this stuff. Very smart thing to do is to get a business credit card. Spend only stuff for the business on that. If you are a member of the church, which I assume most of you are, you ask yourself, is this something I feel okay not paying tithing on? And if the answer is yes, because it is actively you trying to make money off of it, then you put it on the business card, and then you're going to try and claim it as an exemption. Or deduction, yeah.
Also, just a lot of people don't know this, especially students, but so Brandon talked about something called a standard deduction, which is taken off the income that you earn so that it reduces your tax burden. If you keep track of your tithing expenses, and if all of this plus your tithing exceeds the standard deduction, you get to deduct that instead.
Yeah. So anyway, there you are. There you are right here, okay? Questions on this complicated stuff?
Yes. How much is a tax professional?
How much is a tax professional? They are cheap. They are worth your money. Most of them charge by the form. For most of you, it'll be like $100, maybe $200 to do all of this, okay? BYU does it for free. I like having a tax professional because they will keep track. They will tell you when to pay your estimates. All of this stuff. The other thing is, once you start having foreign sales, oh, does it get crazy? Okay. Oh, my phone is going off. Who is calling me? I have a bachelor party tonight that I'm organizing. It's probably, yes, someone going to that. Once you get foreign sales, Okay, you'll have this in your records. Just, you can write this down. Most countries we have a tax treaty with. This means that they will try to charge you taxes on the money you make in France. Because we have a tax treaty with them, the money that you pay on that in France, you do not have to pay again here. Or you can convince France, I am paying my taxes here, and they will not deduct anything from it when they send the money to you, and then you pay it here. It works differently for different countries and different things like that. So, but that gets really complicated. Get a tax professional. I did it myself for a couple of years. Yeah. Get a tax professional. The first year we did it, and he's like, yeah, and he did it, and it cost us like $250 for all this stuff I've been doing. I was like, why didn't I do this earlier? This was so nice. And then he deducted himself, because there's certain amounts, because that you can deduct, right? For the business part of it, he could deduct. So it wasn't the whole thing, but yeah. So yeah. Yeah, the tax, my accountant is worth every penny. So really, this stuff gets really complicated. All right, so you can have in your records, when do you want to start your own business? Brandon's answer, completely arbitrarily, when you're making about $30K a year. That's when I would start your own business. Some will say start it right at the beginning, when you're earning around $5K. The advantages of starting a business, usually most authors do what's called S Corp, or it's S Corp. S Corp, which is really just a corporation with an S election, which means small business. This is versus, I believe, oh boy, this gets really complicated, like just a normal LLC. Or maybe it's an LLC with an S election. Anyway, most people do what's called an S Corp. You'll have to talk to somebody. This gets into talking to lawyers and things, which we talk to. This I know a lot less about because I just went to my lawyer and friend and said, do this. The advantages are, if you put all your copyrights under the corporation, this can give you a lot of liability protection. Meaning if someone, if in your book you end up, someone thinks you plagiarized them, or things like this, then they can sue the corporation, but they can't come after your home assets, I think, in most cases. Talk to your accountant, your lawyer. This is important. There was an author, a local author, very, very good author. I'm not going to mention their name, but they wrote a fiction series, historical fiction series, in which they interviewed somebody about their story and used it in the book. Their documentation they thought was good about this. The person was fine with it. Then, as what I understand, once the person passed away, the children challenged and said that the documentation was not appropriate. The court agreed, and the person was sued for in excess of $500,000. Which they lost the settlement on. Okay? If the corporation has the copyrights, they can go to the corporation for profits on future books. They can't take your house. Okay? That's a pretty important level of protection, I feel. This is why we have done this. You can also do some interesting things where you pay yourself a salary. And then profits you make above the salary, the IRS will actually count as dividends as a shareholder in the company. Because of this, you can save self-employment tax as long as your salary is reasonable. So let's say that you are making $90K, and you and your spouse are officers in the company, and you pay yourself $45K as a writer. I don't know what the number. Listen to your tax accountant, your tax professional. The rest of this is not subject to self-employment tax after the $45K. So you get $45K without paying the 7.5% because, as owners of the company, the book is an asset of the company, which is earning money for the company. And you got paid by the company to write that, a salary, and then it returned dividends, which are taxed differently. Saves you money. This is why the $30K thing is kind of a nice rule of thumb, because once you're getting above that is when you can start paying yourself a reasonable salary and having dividends on top of it. Before that, it really doesn't make any sense. You may want it for this one, and it's only like $500 to establish a corporation. There's a few things you need to do. You need to have bylaws, regular meetings, talk to your lawyer, but and you pay like $500, you file it, you've got a corporation. Okay? I'm trying to think if there's anything else that advantages on this. There's another few small advantages.
Well, and you can shop around too with different states have different corporation laws. I know, for example, Nevada has really positive corporation laws.
Okay. I don't know a lot about that. I don't know a lot about that. Oh, the other thing is your all these deductions and exemptions and things we're talking about. When you're taxed as a corporation and the IRS looks at it and says, wow, this corporation that makes $90,000 a year had $10,000 in deductions, exemptions, whatever. That is small potatoes. We have no interest in auditing them. When this individual makes $90,000 and is taking a $10,000 deduction, we're like, not a lot of people do that. That's interesting. Or when the company has office space. Yeah, they all do. When the person has office space, that's probably a home office. We want to pay attention to them. So there is the added benefit of legitimacy. Okay? Okay, yeah.
Going up on this point, you have to be careful about saying like which state you want.
Yes.
Around, because the IRS looks at that too. Because if you're like, well, I'll go pay my taxes here, and then if the laws change, you go like, well, I'll go pay taxes here where there's like no tax rate.
Uh-huh. Okay, good. I thought that was a little. I know some authors who do that. Exactly what you just said. They are fully behind it. They actually like to choose Idaho as one of their big ones. Because of the tax, the way that the judges rule in Idaho. I don't know how that works. I have stayed away from it. You can talk to other authors. If you come up after, I can tell you some of them you could talk to, and you can get their accountants. I don't know how that works, but I've just stayed away from it.
Well, I think it might raise red flags, but it's not illegal.
Yes.
Legal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the things that the IRS looks at is because people are kind of walking that line, and if you don't want to be like constantly visited by auditors, you might want to just be.
But if that sort of thing you're okay with and you keep good records, you'll be fine. The one I would say be very wary of, some accountants try to classify book income as royalty income. Yes, yeah, she just, be careful about that one, okay? Royalties are meant for royalties paid from like owning a mine that you're renting to somebody and they're mining out stuff and you're getting royalties on the money they get out of it. It isn't usually interpreted for authors who are getting royalties off their books. Royalty income is taxed very favorably toward you, meaning it's you get a lot of things, but it's a it's a line that I'm not sure. Well, I've never wanted to walk that line. You would want to talk to your tax professional, but I'm going to give you a warning against that one. Okay? You agree with that, don't you?
They scrutinize that very closely.
Yeah. Okay. That said, I do know an author who spent 30 years taking it all as royalty income, and the courts have ruled in favor of him because of the places where he is doing that.
Have you ever been audited, and if so, what is it like?
I've never been audited. So. What's that? Yeah. But, I mean, if you have a good tax professional, they'll do most of it. If they've got all the records, the auditor actually goes to them, deals with them, maybe asks you for some records, and you don't even really have to be meeting with them or anything like that. So that's another good reason to have a nice accountant. So, okay, let's move on to funner stuff. Not to imply this isn't fun, but you are going to be very glad you have that all in your notes once you start publishing. I'm sorry that we have to spend time doing this kind of stuff, but I think it's important for you.
All right, one more question on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned, the author that was sued. Are there things that you can say, like, absolutely never do this if you don't want to be sued?
Yeah. Anyone you talk to whose story you consider putting in a book, go get a really, like, I don't do historical fiction or things like that. But if there's someone's story you're using, get an ironclad document of, what do you call it? release, an ironclad release form. And I don't know what one of those looks like, but you could talk to people who do it. That's going to be really helpful for you, okay? Once you get to a certain level of notoriety, you can't avoid not getting sued. I haven't been sued before. J.K. Rowling gets sued all the time. So there's some sort of level between me and her, and she's won every lawsuit. But people, yeah. What's that? She also sues. Yeah. So, yeah. There you go. Okay? Yeah.
What's is there like a time threshold or anything, like as far as using somebody?
I don't know.
Because I mean, obviously, like Genghis Khan or whatever, you know.
Oh yeah. There is like Genghis Khan's matters of record. Yes. And this author really only got in trouble because the children were publishing their memoir, and they were able to prove in court that I heard this like third hand. I know something happened, but the details I'm giving you are third hand. So just keep that in mind. But what happened supposedly is that the children were releasing this book, and they were able to prove in court that this guy's book, using the story, infringed on the thing they were producing that made their sales go down because it had already been used. Does that make sense? Like, since they were able to prove in court damages because of the thing they were doing is why it went poorly for this author.
My question kind of piggybacks on the question back there. Are there certain people that are in the public domain that you can freely write about?
I don't know. I assume that people of record, you can. I don't know what the law is on that. Jane, do you know?
No, but usually a good copy editor will.
Yeah.
They'll
one thing I do know you want to be very careful on is song lyrics. Don't put song lyrics in your books. Those are copyrighted, unless you buy rights to them. And a good copy editor, Jane's right, will know about this. Don't put song lyrics. Don't. For instance, you're probably going to be okay. Like people, historical people. I'm sure you're fine on. Anyone who's really, really dead. But for instance, someone tried to do a biography thing of J.R.R. Tolkien, and the Tolkien estate blocked it recently. You can go look at that. So that is some legal ground that's like, yeah. And one other thing, the difference, let's talk very briefly about the difference between copyright and trademark. Coca-Cola is a trademark. It's not a copyright. That means you can use the word Coca-Cola in your books. There's no problem with that. However, if you write a book where Coca-Cola causes people to turn into zombies, that's probably parody. You'd probably be okay on that. But if it's a book where it causes them to just die, or where you're saying Coca-Cola has this, did I mention this? I think I mentioned this. You can be sued for libel. No, libel. Which one's written? Libel. Yeah. Slanders. Yeah. You can use trademark terms. Okay. You can say, "I Googled it." You don't have to say, "He used a search engine." If you want to, you can say, but you can say, "I Googled it." We went to McDonald's for dinner. You don't have to say, "We went to McDowell's," which, but something like that you're okay doing. Just don't libel them by implying untruths about them, okay? Yeah, anything negative could get you in trouble. Yeah.
Actually, that's not true. Truth is a defense.
Yeah, it is, but it means they could sue. If you're saying anything negative, they can sue you, and they would lose if you fight them.
But you'd rather not have to.
But you'd rather not have to. Does that make sense? So I agree with this one, unless the point of your story is to expose a truth, like something like Fast Food Nation or Super Size Me or something like this. You can use truth as a defense. That's the point of your story. If you're doing that, that's fine. I would, yeah. That's just common sense. But you're right. Truth is, as long as it's truthful, you're okay. Okay? All right. Query letters. Okay. We've done this one. Query letters. Query letters are hard to write. A lot of places you'll be submitting will ask for one of three things. They want a query, a synopsis, or an outline. Most commonly, I've seen query plus synopsis or outline, or sample chapters plus synopsis or outline. Okay? I always preferred to send to these if I could, because anytime I could get my prose in front of them, I felt that my prose would stand on its own. These things are different. A query is one page. Okay? Usually, a query is going to only be like 2 or 3 paragraphs. And what it's going to do is you usually want to, a few things to avoid. Avoid rhetorical. Questions. And avoid sounding like a movie trailer. Often when people write their queries, they try to write their query as if it's the back of the book synopsis, which does these things. And that's why I mention them. Usually the editors are not wanting, what if you couldn't, they usually want to avoid those. If you've got a good one, you can use it. But mostly you want to start your query with a description of, so these are kind of the avoid. You don't want to sound like a movie trailer. Just let me tell you that. You want to have one paragraph about you, and one about, this is about you / facts, and a 1 paragraph book summary. So, first paragraph. My name is Brandon Sanderson. I'm a grad student when I was writing these at Brigham Young University studying writing. I have sent you my epic fantasy novel titled Elantris. It is 240,000 words long with a focus on an interesting magic system. We talked at the World Fantasy Convention in Montreal. I mentioned this book to you. You sound very interested in it, so this is why I'm submitting, or something like that. Or on your blog post, you mentioned, remember the personal connection. You mentioned you like this, or I have loved reading the Dresden Files. I know that you are the editor on this on these books. I'm very impressed with them, and I think I have something of a similar writing style or flair. This is why I've sent the book to you. Something like that. Brief explanation and facts about the book. It is an urban fantasy with a strong female protagonist set in 1920s London. Something like that, okay? Then your 1-sentence book summary. These are hard because basically what you've got to do is you've got to boil your book down to one interesting thing that you can talk about. Don't try and tell the whole book. Try and talk about one interesting thing. And imagine someone was walking along in the bookstore, and they're like, what's your book about? For Mistborn, I always said, my story is about a gang of thieves who decide to rob the Dark Lord and try and rip him off, bribe his armies away from him, and overthrow the Empire. Quick synopsis like that. And then the second paragraph has to be, the main protagonist is a 16-year-old girl who's recruited into this team and trained to use the magic that they know how to use because they realize they're all too easily identifiable and they need a new face to act as their mole among the nobility. And that's it. That's my book summary. 2 sentences of something interesting. What the main kind of plot hook is and what's interesting about the main character.
Jim Butcher does something for this. He kind of has a skeletal structure for it. He says, when something happens, your protagonist pursues a goal, but will he succeed when the antagonist provides opposition?
Yeah.
Pretty basic way of doing it.
Yep. You don't want to give the whole book, okay? You want to get across, just in 1 paragraph, something cool. Avoid lots of new names, okay? You can name your protagonist, but don't say, in the world of Garthnap, young Dithel Flam is a aspiring fling-flinger, and he decides that to join the fling-flinger group. I mean, stay away. We have so many cool names. Don't use those. Okay? Give yourself like 1, maybe 2 names. All right? Stay away from them. Jane.
I know a lot of agents are saying you should actually flip the 2.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably should. You probably should. Yeah, I always wrote them this way, but yeah.
It's because everybody's reading them on their phones, and so if you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. So you can learn how to write a killer query letter online. I can give you these little kind of advice. The real thing that comes into it is try and boil your book down to one cool concept that you can explain to someone in one sentence. The strange attractor will help you with this. What is familiar and what is strange, and how does the combination of the two of them make something interesting? Okay? Yeah.
Do you mention series and other books?
Nope. No, 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 no. No. You can, if you really feel like it, say, this is a standalone book but has series potential. Don't scare the editor off with, this is the first book of my 30-book epic fantasy series. And yeah. I would just say this is my book, and you really, your first book, guys, should have a good ending and should stand on its own. Don't be sending out anything that doesn't do that, okay? Even if it's part of a series. Make that ending satisfying. That's a big thing that I feel personally, artistically, you should be doing with your books, particularly when you're an author that nobody knows yet, okay? So, practice this online. Practice taking, or by reading online, practice going to films with your friends, and then afterwards saying, can we boil this down to the 2 or 3 sentence? You know, 1 sentence about a character, 1 sentence about a conflict, 1 sentence about a cool concept. You know, what in this movie how would we pitch it if we were writing this, or you know, do it with books that you all know? What's the pitch for Star Wars? What's the pitch for Indiana Jones? These sort of things, and see if you can do it, and that will help you. It's going to kill you because you can't put all the cool stuff in it that you want to, but you have to do it anyway. Yeah.
It's a great way to get inspiration for your own stories too.
Yeah.
I mean, get the core concept right out of that.
Yep, yep, and then turn it and make it your own. Yeah. All right, so synopsis outline, people have different definitions on what these are. Usually this is like a 1 to 2 page, and this is like a 3 to 5 page. But see if you can figure out what their own definition is, and if you can't find it, use I would say the 2 to 3 pager for a synopsis or an outline, okay? And in this, you can go more into depth. This is just 2 pages of my story starts here. Here's what's interesting about this. This is where the conflict goes, yada, 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 and here's the cool climax. Do not leave out the cool climax. Editors don't want to be surprised. Editors want to know that your story has a good ending. Okay? Yes? No, it's good.
Would you, if you had a book to pitch, would you write basically a form query, a form synopsis, and a form outline, and then just adjust them as you submit, or do you write one from scratch every time?
I write one from scratch. And this one, the paragraph in here, would become my pitch if I met editors and they actually asked for one. Like when you're at this con and you're talking to the editor about what they find exciting and all these things, and you say, you know, I have a book that you might want to read. Could I send it to you? Most of the time they'll say, yeah, here's my card, send me sample chapters. Sometimes they will say, yeah, what's your book about? That is when you pull out this thing that you have practiced saying to your friends 100 times so you can get it off really fast. Don't make it sound like you've said it 100 times. Make it sound like it's exciting, that you're just talking, but really you want to go 1 paragraph and give them this thing, okay? Be ready to fire that off when they ask for it. When a reader, you know, when your friends say, maybe I'll read your book, what's it about? You want to be able to fire this one off, okay? When you get really good, you'll have like 4 or 5 of them, and you'll tailor them to the person walking along that's, you know, asking about your book. The YA editor that you send Mistborn to, you say, it's about a 16-year-old girl who, the science fiction editor, you say, you know, it's a heist story where everyone has a different magical talent, and they're going to pull them all together to use and pull off this awesome heist. To the fantasy editor, you say, you know, the person who does a lot more fantasy, you say, imagine if the prophesied hero who was supposed to save the world failed. That is a rhetorical question, but, you know, what if the hero failed? So I broke my own rule there. But what if the hero failed? What if, you know, gained this cast of plucky sidekicks and they went on this quest and then failed, Dark Lord took over the world. That one I usually do is like a 3-paragrapher if someone's really interested, and then I go into the Gang of Thieves and stuff, and then things like that. So, you know, you can have a few of them you can tailor depending on what the person, you know, likes. All right.
Do you normally have your writing group read over those before sending them off, or is that...
No, but you could. I was terrible at these back then. I've only learned to do them now since I've been published. which, is also kind of ironic. All right, movie deals. We're going to go very quickly through movie deals because by the time you're getting movie deals, you should have an agent who can talk you through all of this. Basically, to understand movie deals, what you want to understand is people will usually come to you rather than you going to them. I've only just been started to be able to go to people and say, here's this cool project. I'm going to put it up, I'm going to be shopping it around. Are you interested? And things like that. And I still don't get very far with that. I was able to do that with Legion, but Steelheart, I had to have it published before they would even still buy the rights on it. So usually you'll wait till they come to you. What you're looking for is the mighty option. We talked about options, correct? No, didn't we? Yeah, we talked about options. We talked about options. They're going to option and license. Usually what option periods have been are 18 months, 18 months, 12 months. So it's a contract that says on execution of the contract, they pay you around, this is a really rough figure, 10% of the final buyout price. So Alcatraz was $500K. It was 35K. So it wasn't quite the 10%. All right. Then 18 months, they get to sit on it and try and develop a film based on it. So that the idea is they kind of own the rights, but they kind of don't. They're optioning them. You can't sell them to anyone else. They have this time to try and get things going and things like that. At the end of 18 months, they usually pay the same amount again. And then at the end of that 18 months, they usually play like a smaller amount for a smaller period. And that's what it was for Alcatraz, 35, 35, 25. On Alcatraz, these two went against the 500K. If they ever made the movie, they would pay me the remaining, and the 25 didn't, for whatever reason. Okay? So this is how a movie deal works. You get paid $35,000 or whatever. Like if your movie is going to be smaller budget, it'll be smaller. A lot of movie options are like 7 or 10K or 1,500.
So then, if they option these, basically they're saying is we're going to see if we can't develop this into a movie. But if we haven't developed it into a movie, then you get your...
Yeah, you get the rights back. Mm-hmm. Yep. And they at any of these points can decide not to pay anymore and just not re-up.
At which point, then you have the option of...
selling it to someone else. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Can you also decide not to re-up after?
No, I don't think you can. I don't think that you can. Depends on the contract, but I believe you can. I'm having real trouble getting the money out because this is my first one. I'm like, ooh, now. But I think on Legion, on Legion it was less. On Legion it was like 12 or something like that, and then like 7 and 7 or something like that. But then on Legion there was an episode payment. If an episode gets made, you make like 10 more for every episode or something like that. It was some structure. I don't know what the actual money was, but that was a television deal. So on that one, the idea is that you don't get paid a lot unless it gets turned into a show, and then they do 13 episodes, and then suddenly you've made a lot, right? So that's what you're looking for on that. So basically, this is the money you're going to get. If they promise you anything more, you're probably never going to see it, all right? If they promise you a percentage of the profit, movies don't make profit. No movie in the history of movies has ever made a profit because of what they call Hollywood accounting. Google Hollywood accounting, they'll talk about it. The idea is that they owe their investors all this money, their investors being the parent corporation or things like that, and since they can never pay them back everything they're owed, guess what? The movie never makes any money. This was spoofed in the movie The Producers, which kind of did this play on this.
So
none of them. No movie has ever made profit. Nope. This is why the writer of Forrest Gump sued them, because he was promised a percentage of the profit. And the movie didn't make any profit. Go read up on that thing. What happened with Peter Jackson, I don't know the specifics, so you can't really quote me on this, but what I understand what happened with him is New Line was required to pay him a certain percentage of the money made off the DVD sales, and so they made a dummy company and sold them the DVD rights for like a penny. No, probably not that, but like, you know, 100,000, and then paid him his money based on that, and then the dummy company went and sold it for 35 billion or whatever it is that it made, and he didn't get anything off of that. That's why Peter Jackson was suing. I don't know the details. That's the scuttlebutt, but that's, you know, yeah, who knows if that's true or not. But, so, you will not see any more money on that. There are some ways to get a little more money. One is the screenwriting. If you are good at screenwriting, you can make it you're required to let you write the first draft. They will throw it away, but they will pay you a certain screenwriting fee, which is mandated by the Writers Guild in California. If you do this, you will have to join the Writers Guild, the union. Just be aware of that. But then you will get the fee that they are required to pay you, which is actually fairly substantial. So another thing is you can get a producer credit. If you get a producer credit, they can be forced to, you know, pay you whatever to be a producer, and then your name gets listed as one of the producers, and then they hope you never show up to use the chair they're required to have for you on the set or whatever. But you can get that. There's all sorts of things like this. Nobody gives a percentage of like the merchandising anymore, ever since Lucas got him on that one. But you can fight over it and get like 1/2 of 1%. You can get bonuses if you say, like, if the movie makes, according to Variety's reporting, it makes $100 million, I am required to get this extra payment if it hits this threshold. That you can do. But don't try to do anything for profit and make profit, okay? When they sign this deal, you are giving away the rights, okay? Hollywood won't buy it if you're not. You are making a deal with hopefully very nice people who represent the devil. Not necessarily the devil, but maybe, you know. That means that you have no say in what they do. You will not be able to merchandise a lot of your merchandise after that. T-shirts and things, you are selling to them the rights to do all of this. They can make as many sequels as they want, and they will pay you less and less for each of the sequels. Because the argument is, once the film has been made and is making money, it's no longer your success that is driving people to see the sequels, it's the success of the original film. So you'll make less and less.
So if those sequels are based off of an actual book in the series, is that still how it goes?
Yeah. Yep. What's that? Yes, they won't buy it without the series. Unless you're really powerful. J.K. Rowling might have been able to do that or something like that. But yeah, they're not going to buy this. Remember how Hollywood is. Hollywood is a crapshoot. They're trying to make some films. The ones that flop are paid for by the ones that are successful. If they can't then take the successful ones and make sequels after them, off of them, which are the sure things, that's where they actually make money, then they are not going to buy the rights. It's not worth it to them.